It is a real pleasure to be in the company of such wonderful people who share our commitment and are deeply concerned with the future of humankind and our environment. My mom was a university-educated art major, and in 1967, she warned what would happen with Los Angeles. By the 1990s, if nothing was done, it would get covered with a big yellow cloud. We've been warned about the negative effects of increasing carbon emission as a result of human activities for decades. We must change our pattern of consumption if we want to leave our children a viable, sustainable planet.
We are going to suffer. There's no quick solution to this, and we're already there. I mean, with more wildfires, with drought, farmers suffering as a result of drought, people dying from heat exhaustion. It's like you're getting sick and sicker and sicker, and you're going to die eventually, but there is a way to save yourself. So, take the prescription.
I have devoted my life to fighting for the rights and well-being of children globally. It's in that vein that Children Now has developed the Leadership Now program, Creating Success Together. What is the essence of responsible leadership? The inherent leadership potential of all our youth. The importance of respecting diversity, inclusion, equity. The importance of saying no to intimidation and racial discrimination. Our highest aspirations are all reserved for our children's future, to bequeath them with a healthy planet. "97% of climate scientists all agree that humans have played a major role in the acceleration of climate change. And yet, we still must deal with a segment of our otherwise responsible population that refuse to accept the undeniable fact."
Well, there's been just so many studies done to show that methane and CO2 create a cloud which prevents our warmth that we produce from escaping. It's like an electric blanket, It just gets getting hotter and hotter. There really is no serious scientists in the world that are saying that we're not responsible. We are.
While I respect everyone's opinion, including those skeptics out there, let's assume that you are right and that global warming is a natural phenomenon. Do we still not have an obligation to ensure the future health of our planet for future generations?
We've got to figure out a way of controlling greenhouse gas emissions. I mean, that's the number one priority.
Citizens globally are experiencing more severe weather, more frequent and severe floods, more frequent and severe wildfires.
I checked NOAA, the National Oceanographic and Aerospace Association of the United States. Last year, there were 22 separate weather events connected with climate change that exceeded $1 billion in damages. Hurricanes, superstorms, wildfires that spread throughout the West in the United States, and super flooding, where torrential rains came down.
When we have warmer temperatures, the snow and the ice melts more quickly in the springtime, and this causes rivers to overflow their banks.
Not only that, of course, they've caused a great deal of human suffering and death.
One of the major impacts of climate change on the Indian subcontinent is the receding glaciers. The Gangotri Glacier, where the Ganges River originates, has receded almost 1.5 kilometers since 1935. Secondly, there is an increase in the intensity of precipitation received during the monsoon season, causing not only floods and glacial lake outbursts, but also crop failures. Lastly, with about 7,000 kilometers of coastline, climate change is bringing extreme weather events such as cyclones and storm surges, apart from submerging low-lying coastal areas.
Floods and droughts They have had devastating effects in Africa. Drought, for example, has caused severe food crisis across Somalia, Djibouti, Ethiopia, and parts of northern Kenya, all cause massive population migrations, which precipitate conflicts between communities.
Between 1983 and 1990, there were 14 catastrophic events. Between 1991 and 2000, there were 33. Between the year 2001 and 2010, there were 47 catastrophic weather-related events. And between 2011 and 2020, there were 102, 36 of those being water-related.
Global warming aside, I'm sure you would agree that humans have negatively impacted other aspects of the environment. Pesticide that we put on our farms, that rolls down in our rivers. It increased the toxin in aquatic ecosystem, resulting in irreparable harm to the species that reside within them. And now what about the Amazon rainforest? Yes, despite the immense value we have all derived from Earth's rainforest, since the 1960s, we have already lost more than 50% of those. And with each passing day, we lose another 81,000 hectares of rainforest. That is the equivalent of 14 times the island of Manhattan.
Forests provide 50%, 60% of all the water, fresh water in the world. If we exposed all of our streams to the effects of the sun, most of those streams would evaporate. But our forests shade them, but you take that shade away, you've got a problem.
It goes without saying that major wildfire cause irreparable damage to flora and fauna, throwing the entire ecosystem off balance. Forest fires destroy and displace wildlife. Forest fires adversely affect the air quality well beyond the approximate location of the fires themselves. It's an urgent wake-up call. Yes, what amazes me and continues to unsettle me is why is it taking so long to recognize and accept this unfortunate reality? We've been warned for years, and yet we elect to continue with our destructive way.
I got a glimpse of this because there is a research site in Minnesota where they've actually got these chambers in the forest, and they've controlled the temperature and the CO2 to levels that would mimic what was going to happen in the future. So in those chambers, those trees are just dying. There's some plants that are doing well, but they're mostly bushes, scrub. It's going to change the landscape dramatically, but I think what's really going to alter the situation is that a lot of this is going to burn. 14 of the 20 worst destructive fires in California have happened since 2003. And that is a phenomenon that is going to start migrating north. And we're seeing it already with Fort McMurray burning, BC burning in the last couple of years.
And what about the Greenland glacier? Do you know that if the Greenland was to melt, the ocean level will rise by 27 feet, 9 meters, and that doesn't include the Arctic and Antarctic. Can you imagine what will happen to this planet if we let that happen?
Many lowland communities in the United States, Western Canada, in the Indian and Pacific Ocean are going to be extremely vulnerable to what's happening. I don't know the exact numbers, but we're talking tens of millions of people.
And what is even more disturbing is that the ice is presently melting at the speed that scientists were predicting would occur 50 years from now.
We're going to see an Arctic Ocean basically being seasonally ice-free within the next 50 years or so, and probably sooner, I think, because we're constantly underestimating the impact. It's very possible we'll see the extinction of polar bears, of beluga whales, narwhal, those quintessentially Arctic animals that are tied to ice.
In the last 150 years, the Earth temperature has risen by 0.8 degrees. Scientists now agree that the temperature will rise by 7 degrees by the end of the century if nothing is done. That is in less than 78 years. The 10 warmest years in the 139 years record all have occurred since 2005, with the 5 warmest years being the 5 most recent.
And the danger is a runaway warming situation. And that's why the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Scientists, for example, in their most recent report, 2019, they're raising, the alarm. Runaway means we can't stop it. Tipping point after tipping point after tipping point is being passed.
And what about the food waste and CO2 emission? The world wastes 1/3 of all food that is produced, which translates into 3.3 billion tons of CO2. Yes, released into the atmosphere every year. And what about the environmental impact of war? Do you know how much pollution the Iraq War caused by itself? It created more CO2 and other types of pollution than the rest of the world put together while the war lasted.
I mean, the Iraq War was a classic example, blowing up oil refineries, and it's just a lot of wasted resources.
What about the environmental impact of the World War I, World War II, the Kosovo War, and the Gulf War? War leaves a terrible legacy of pollution, a legacy which will affect future generations long after the conflict has ceased.
No one really wins a war.
To make matters worse, some politicians say we're not going to jeopardize jobs for the environment. On the contrary, we can create jobs, especially with corporations, multinationals adopting strategies that contribute to a green economy. A green economy translates into a low-carbon, resource-efficient, and socially inclusive economy.
We've already seen societies such as Germany now moving more directly to alternative energy as opposed to fossil fuels. I think that in France now, all new houses have to have some kind of alternative energy incorporated into building designs.
Building and construction activities are responsible for 39% of all carbon emissions in the world, from energy that is used to heat, cool, and light buildings, alone accounting for 28%. We need a paradigm shift in designing and planning of communities and neighborhoods so that they are socially, economically, and ecologically integrated towards a restoration and healing of the planet.
Luckily, 65 countries have adopted green economy strategies by shifting investment and policies toward clean technology, resource-efficient infrastructure, well-functioning ecosystem, green skilled labor, and good governance.
Investors, regulators are demanding that organizations become more transparent with respect to their carbon footprint and particularly their investment in carbon-intensive industries.
Norway's pulling out of the oil sands, China's pulling out of the oil sands. A number of companies are pulling out of the oil sands because they understand that this is not the future. So it's not just kind of the tree huggers who, should be worried about it. It's also people who have commercial interests.
Now you may say, what can we do?
Vote. I think voting is the most powerful tool that people have. Vote for a government that is committed to dealing with climate change in the future.
Certainly awareness campaigns are becoming more frequent. They're being introduced by governments and by community associations. What they need to help individuals understand is that they can have a real impact on mitigating climate change.
For all the horror stories that we hear, I still think that I'm optimistic. I really think that at some point, if we work collectively together, we can slow this down. There are solutions to this.
Now they can make lifestyle changes, such as changing to a more plant-based diet and reducing food waste.
Both my children don't drive. They're not interested in driving. We're just seeing a new kind of ethic arising in this next generation.
But I think most importantly, individuals should hold governments and communities and businesses accountable to their climate action commitments.
Start questioning the values of your parents' generation, because money has no soul, whereas people do.
Each of us is not only an individual, but each of us is at the same time socially constituted. If you and I are manifesting, if we're recognizing human dignity and manifesting these universal values, it may be a personal commitment, but at the same time, that resonates with all other people because they share the same dignity, they share the same freedom, they share the same humanity, the common humanity.
I suggest a course of action that could include electing government that place priorities on the environment and are prepared to accept responsibility and accountability for their action. Government should create coalition to ensure that no countries violate these objectives, buying strictly from countries that are respecting the international agreement to protect the environment. There is no stronger incentive than the market. Believe me, not buying from polluting countries will work.
We have to take action. We as citizens of the world have to do something very important. And I think that's what this conference is about, that we're holding this symposium for young people that we're holding in Montreal.
And we should be educating the future generation on the way nature works, empowering our youth as future responsible citizens to embrace diversity, equity, and inclusion, and understanding the connection between accountable leadership and responsible environmental stewardship.
In Canada, there are 26 charitable organizations that work in the climate action area. They need to help educate everyone, but especially our youth.
As Chief Executive Officer of Children Now, we have developed a leadership program and are also organizing a virtual international symposium entitled Youth Leadership and Climate Action. Our youth delegation will participate in workshops designed to empower them. Global thought leaders will address practical and actionable climate change initiatives. Youth delegates participating in the symposium will have the opportunity to work with thought leaders in special plenary session.
Actually, that should be our God-given mandate and is our responsibility to equip the youth, because all nations, all humanity relies on the future of what the youth will inherit, what they will learn, what they will share from our generation.
Following the symposium, the number one objective is to launch the leadership program and make it available and accessible to all Canadian youth, to all children. Yes, we will also create a major awareness campaign with a global focus.
We care about future generations. We care about one another precisely because there's a common humanity that we all share that is absolutely fundamental. It transcends cultural differences. It transcends language differences and national differences.
I believe that our primary role would be to convey this message effectively to the future generations so that we bring back stability, harmony, and balance with nature.
It is most urgent that we act now, because it is not 5 minutes to midnight, it's not an hour past midnight, it's years past midnight. And yes, unfortunately, in the absence of meaningful, immediate, and collective change, we are definitely in the extinction list species. Now, together, if we do roll our sleeve, yes, we can make the difference, and we must do it for the love of all children, future generation, for the love of all.